Right, okay. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning to our talk, What if Intranets Were Smart? How AI assistants can turn any intranet into a digital workplace genius. Just before we begin, a little bit about Adenin. We were founded in 1999 and are incorporated here in Boston, but we have two more offices in the UK and in Germany. And our bestseller so far has been an intranet software called Intelli Enterprise. And a little bit about myself. Well, Tricia already introduced me, so I'm going to skip that. Thank you very much. So before we begin, let's look back just 5 years into the year 2011. Back then, we had very little smartphone demand at the workplace. iPhones were mostly deemed not safe for most Windows-based networks. Therefore, beyond the stock mail and calendar apps, there wasn't much of a demand for workplace apps. Therefore, there also wasn't really a market for third-party apps for the workplace. But since then, smartphone ownership has changed a lot. In 2011, just a third of all Americans owned a smartphone. But since then, this number has doubled. And now, close to 70% of people own a smartphone. So today, we have some smartphone support at the workplace, along with a handful of business apps. And we're aiming towards the digital workplace. However, we're still a long way away from reaching that. Just the digital workplace, I'm not going to explain too much about it and what it is or isn't. That's a whole nother talk. But just to recap what Gartner says it is, it's a new and more effective way of working. And it exploits consumer trends, apps, and technologies. Therefore, it's also called the consumerization of the workplace sometimes. And the goal is to raise employee engagement. Now, the way to the digital workplace is called digital transformation, and it's the hot topic everybody is currently talking about. Mobile devices and how we work with them is at the center of the digital transformation. And in the US, 40% of employees already bring their smartphones to the workplace. But you'll be interested to learn that almost 80% of college graduates own a smartphone. So we can expect this number to go up in the near future. And already last year, Google reported that they have more searches coming from mobile than desktops, not just in the US, but in 11 more countries as well. And with the average individual checking their phone up to 150 times a day, we clearly have moved our center of attention towards the smartphone, as consumers anyways. But having said that, there are some problems with the digital transformation. Only a measly third of all companies have a policy or program for digital transformation. So if you don't have one, you're in good company. And from those companies that do have a program, their executives think that at best, their company is a quarter of the way towards reaching their end state vision of their digital workplace. 63%, so almost 2/3 of executives, believe that they need to pick up the pace and that they're behind the curve when it comes to their digital transformation. 77% of companies say that missing digital skills are a key hurdle to their digital transformation. And just over half of senior executives say that they're just not familiar enough with the technology and that is a hurdle to their digital transformation. It gets a little worse before it gets better, I'm afraid. So 25% of companies in a study have said that they have a clear understanding of their digital touchpoints. Meanwhile, 90% of them, that's actually quite blurry, 90% reported they are already engaging in digital transformation. So in the bottom line that says they are already doing it, but they don't know how or why precisely. But those companies that have thrown themselves into the deep end and went all in, unfortunately for them, the story doesn't brighten considerably. Because 2 in 3 employees in a survey said that they rarely use their enterprise apps because it's such a poor experience. Actually, this isn't surprising because 2/3 of companies have no plans to develop their own apps. So if you don't invest in this kind of technology, no one could reasonably expect the outcome to be all that fantastic. So how do our intranets fare in the light of the digital workplace? Well, not that well actually. Your intranet may actually suck, yes. Most companies haven't upgraded their intranets in the past 5 years. So if you're still on SharePoint 2010, then you're in good company. Most intranets were built before iPhones were even a thing, so the experience on mobile leaves something to be desired. Most intranets are still desktop only, VPN only. I know this firsthand because we sell our own intranet and we see this with our customers every day. Intranets are also really bad at integrating outside sources like Dropboxes or email attachments. They're literally just a repository for all of your policies, corporate news, legal things, boring stuff. So depending on your perspective, that could be a problem. Some people say the intranet is a little bit like a city library in the age of Google. Sure, it's a beautiful place where you have all of this vetted information, but if your customers or if your people just stop showing up and if it's just becoming less and less central to their productivity, then you need to do something to address that. So overall, the verdict, unfortunately, is that intranets today show very little digital workplace mantra. However, I wouldn't tell you all of this bad news if I wouldn't have a solution as well. There is a way to make intranet smarter. We actually have identified 3 key aspects that companies can use to tangibly innovate towards their goal of a digital workplace, of their own smarter intranet. First, are new ways to search. Second, are card-based user interfaces. And third, are bots for communication or for chats between data and humans. First up, search. Our current state of intranet searches, unfortunately, is, well, not so smart if you think about it. Let me explain. If you ask your, say, SharePoint, a very, very easy question. How many days of annual leave do I have left? What's the response you're going to get? Of course, 0 results. Ugh, that's frustrating. I don't know about you, but I think in this day and age, we as users should no longer accept this, because as consumers, we search like this.
Okay, Google, how long does it take to learn to swim?
The average adult will take around 20 hours of swimming lessons.
Of course, when talking about search, I'm looking at Google or the Google Now app. And search, while making an appearance in almost every software you use, is attested to be seldom executed well. And even when it is, it's regarded as too expensive and too complex. CMS Virus cites an example where a marketing department had to look through a whopping 12 different sources to get their simple, daily, up-to-date information. No one in their right mind would use Google, Yahoo, Bing, let alone 9 more search engines just to look up a simple fact. So I think it is fair to say that intranets are overdue for an update. And as it turns out, we can use the same technologies Google uses to make its search smart, to make business search smart. Now we're in the area of artificial intelligence, like voice recognition, for example. If you think back when Siri first came out, its accuracy was kind of hit and miss, but Google and Apple have stepped up their game since, and actually companies can now tap into the prowess of big players like Amazon Echo and Alexa, or Google and its voice recognition to harness that same power for their own interfaces. Or NLP, natural language processing. In recent years, natural language processing has made its way into many operating systems. Mac OS 10, Windows 10, and basically what it is if it's a natural sounding search command. So if I'm on my Mac searching for emails I received last week from Martin, then artificial intelligence automatically figures out which part of the sentence refers to the sender, the recipient, the time, and so on. And this is going to become tremendously interesting when companies try to provide instant answers to their employees. Which brings us to the format in which such answers are delivered to the user. Cards. So cards are an interesting idea. If I ask my, suppose now smart intranet, the same question again, how many days of annual leave do I have left? Then the answer you get now is a card. That's an interesting concept. It gives you an instant, definitive answer to your question, and it shows rich media or teaser images to visualize your answer. And it shows you related information. If I have a question, if I have a problem, who can I speak to? Who can help me solve it? What are the relevant policies I might want to read? And of course, I can use meaningful actions to help me start a new leave request right from this card. That's pretty neat. What's great about cards is that they're self-contained. So they work just inside themselves, and you can place very different cards underneath each other without need to worry about confusing your users. That also makes them perfect for mobile, because I can show cards underneath each other on a small smartphone, but show them side by side on a bigger tablet or a desktop. This is why cards have made their ways into many user interfaces at Twitter, Google, Facebook, Pinterest. So by the time cards have made their way into enterprises, your employees will have already encountered them in consumerized services many, many times. One other drawback of our current user interfaces is that they're static. I have all of these buckets here on this intranet homepage. I have updates, announcements, shortcuts, and they're always there, whether or not I actually need them. And the files and the updates they show are the same as well. I've already seen this update, and I've read this news article like 20 times. But current intranets have no way of knowing whether this is still relevant to me. But cards can help with that too, because they're personal. Cards know everything about me. They know my role, well, not everything corporate about me. They know my role, they know which documents I've recently worked on, and they know my colleagues. And that helps me, if I use and harness all of this information and put it to the advantage, that helps me create a personal experience for the user. So if I kind of dynamically lay out these cards here, then I see all of the relevant updates which are just tailored to me. And if I've seen an update, I could just swipe it away, dismiss it, and all of the remaining cards will rearrange. Next up, bots. Bots are quite the buzzword since of very recently, but what actually are they? They're essentially a new type of user interface that is a message. So some of you might say, wait a minute, a message, that sounds like a command line from the 80s or like Linux. And while that's true, there's also a key difference. That being that if I text something to a bot, the way it reads and responds to me is similar in a fashion to how a human would interact with me. And there are different kinds of bots for all things from flight reservations, e-commerce, messaging, to maybe a leave request bot. But that doesn't mean all bots have their own app. They're all integrated into one and the same messaging app, making messaging apps actually the new platform for bots. Already last year, TechTarget said that bots will replace apps. Therefore, bot stores will become the new app stores. And the founder of Evernote has said that bots are the most exciting thing in tech he's seen since the iPhone. Now, this might have been fortune telling back then, but since Microsoft and Facebook both have announced their commitment to creating bots, it's sure to say that they're here to stay. Microsoft, for example, has created a bot framework where companies can create an order-taking bot, for example, for pizza. Or Facebook has created its own bot, which allows me to order flowers from 1-800-Flowers without having to phone them up anymore. So I don't press 1 for roses, 2 for tulips, and so on. But instead, I would swipe and click and type my way through this process. But Facebook does one more thing with it. They also want to replace email notifications for things like confirmations or even boarding passes, like, for example, Dutch airline KLM already is using today in a pilot project. So in a company, in an enterprise setting, we will have many different bots for small compartmentalized tasks. So bots, just like apps, can do one thing only, but that relatively well. So if I stay with my example of a leave request bot, then my bot would have to figure out 3 key things before it can accept my leave request. How much leave I'm still entitled to take, how long I want to take the leave, and why. The first one, the remaining leave, for example, the bot could get straight from our payroll software. Then the bot has to capture the to and from date for my leave request. And finally, it has to ask me what the reason is, if it's jury duty or parental leave. And that's it, really. Short and sweet, that's the idea behind them. So in 5 years' time, where will we be? Of course, on Star Trek Enterprise. Computer, send me better technicians, or clear my paper jam, or anything other, anything else intelligent that will prompt my magic assistant to do the work for me. By the way, we will raffle one of these off for real. So if you want to enter, just leave your business cards either with me here now or later at our stand, and we will email the winner tomorrow morning. But seriously though, in 5 years' time, we anticipate that our apps and workplace applications will be fully consumerized, and they will be available on all kinds of devices seamlessly. So not just desktops and phones or even watches, but even in your car or on your fridge if you want. And the data that they show will also have learned to escape the silos it is currently trapped in. And we think that kind of dumb repositories will be replaced with smarter and intelligent assistants that can do the more tedious aspects of our work for us. Actually, I probably should have disclosed this earlier, but this technology isn't 5 years away from hitting the market. We have worked tirelessly to bring this technology to you today. We've developed an assistant that brings any intranet 5 years into the future, and we're calling it Now Assistant. It's the world's first AI assistant for the workplace. This is how it looks. It shows me cards proactively about updates in my data. So cards are these kind of post-it sized elements you see here. It's actually better to see on this screen. And cards are personal and just in time. So it knows knows my role within the company and can tailor the experience according to that. And they're also always up to date. So sometimes when I read an email, by the time I've opened it, the information in it may already be outdated. But cards don't suffer from that same fate because they're always connected to the server. So if something changes, the card will instantly show and reflect that change. And we have bots to over 50 sources already pre-programmed, so they're ready for you to just enter your API address. So of course, on-premise applications like SharePoint or Exchange for emails and calendar, or many cloud-based services like Jammer, Box, Dropbox, Office 365, you name it, Google Docs, and also, of course, databases like SQL Server or many other relational databases. And you can use all of these bots to search within your entire company from the palm of your hand, or to execute commands like start up the leave request bot. And the most, I think, intriguing aspect of the assistant is that it works where you work. It's an omnipresent assistant. So you can use it not just in the app, but you can use it in Slack. So I can just have a conversation with my bot in there, ask how much leave do I have left, and a response. But it also works with a couple of other messaging applications. But it also, of course, comes in its own HTML5 web app. We call it the Now app. Users will access this through their browser, which means it's secure, as no data gets actually stored locally on the device. And of course, you could also wrap such a web app into a native app shell for submission to the Android or iOS app stores. And it's from the ground up designed to be responsive, so you would be using the same application on both your smartphone and the desktop. And we also have integrations with existing intranets. For example, in SharePoint here, where we have this little Now button here. And if I click that, that just slides open the assistant view. I can make a search, look at my cards, start a voice command. It works really well, and it feels like an entirely smarter way to use an intranet. Or similarly, in our own intranet solution, Intelli Enterprise, again, we have a Now button which slides open the assistant view. But we also have developed a Chrome extension. So if you're predominantly working in an application like Salesforce and you don't want to miss out on cards, you can install this extension, and it will just show your assistant as a drop-down where it can do the very same things. Also, it shows a little badge icon, all of them do. So if there's something new, you'll see a little number, so you'll never miss another update. Now it's time for a very short demo. So here I have my Now Assistant app in this mock-up iPhone, and I can now scroll up and down my list of cards. So for example, here I have a help desk card, which shows me help desk tickets, which have been recently assigned to me, with the most recent one being on top. Here, for example, I have a news card, but I'm already aware of this news, so I want to get rid of it. So I'm just clicking and sliding this away. And then the card has been dismissed, and they rearrange. Above that here, for example, I have, so cards are not just one way, but like I said, you can also have actions right on them. So if I have a workflow card, for example, where here my colleague Jody, she's requesting 11 days of leave, I could now decline or approve this request right on the card. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this, so the card disappears, which means the workflow has been dealt with. Now, speaking of leave, I want to request leave myself, actually. So hopefully this works, fingers crossed. How many days of annual leave do I have left? And the assistant here shows me my answer card. You've seen this before in the presentation. It has an answer, visualizes here the leave days I've already taken in the past. And I also have the possibility here to start a new leave request right from this card, which is pretty neat. So it opens up here the right form, which is mobile friendly. I can put in all of these details, but I don't have to necessarily go through this application, through this app on my phone. If I prefer to work in Slack, I could just ask my assistant in Slack, how many days of annual leave do I have left? And then in a similar fashion, it shows me the response here right in Slack. Now Assistant is available today, and you can install it on-premise behind your own firewall, but it also works with cloud services, for example, Azure or Amazon Web Services. Thank you very much for your attention. If you're interested in seeing Now Assistant for yourself, feel free to come by our stand outside. And any questions? Yes, please.
When you swipe something away,
Mm-hmm.